Thank you, Mr President. I also rise to indicate support of this legislation on behalf of the Greens. The Greens have always supported a health approach to substance use. We believe that harm minimisation is the most appropriate way to reduce the adverse health, social and economic consequences of alcohol and the use of other drugs. We want to see a reduction in high-risk uses of nicotine and tobacco, as we acknowledge that they are substances that can cause significant harm. And of course, one of the risks around vaping and access to e-cigarettes is that if young people and children get access to these drugs from a very young age, they're going to be using them potentially throughout the life cycle. It's important for us that there are supports in place to help young people under the age of 15 to move away from nicotine. This is an argument the Greens have consistently made in the federal parliament, and indeed in July, when the federal government moved to ban the importation, manufacture, sale, supply and commercial possession of vapes in Australia, the Greens made that point. In the vaping reforms passed by the federal parliament in June, the Greens negotiated with the Albanese government in Canberra to secure some positive measures to support a health approach in relation to e-cigarettes and vapes. Under this new agreement, GPs can continue to prescribe therapeutic vapes. Possession of personal use of quantities will not be subject to criminal charge. There will be a review of the legislation after 3 years, and additional funding will be provided to support young people quitting vaping. And I note, of course, that this will be of benefit to young people in South Australia as well. We note that this proposed bill will bring South Australia into line with changes made at the federal level. Some of the changes include increasing penalties for the sale to children of selling tobacco without a licence, advertising tobacco or cigarette products, or smoking in a smoke-free area. We also welcome the establishment of a 5-metre smoke-free and vape-free buffer at public transport stops to support the health of people that are waiting for public transport. I might take this opportunity just to recognise the leadership of Minister Picton. I think he has been a real national leader in this space. Indeed, I recognise his work as a political staffer when he worked for the Honourable Nicola Roxon when she was Federal Health Minister on world-leading legislation to ban tobacco advertising, in effect, on tobacco packets and to implement plain cigarette packaging. That was a world-leading piece of legislation, and I know that the Honourable or before he was a minister, Chris Picton, worked on that. And here in this parliament, I think the Honourable Minister has really taken up the fight against the big tobacco companies, so I do commend him for that. I also echo the statements made by the Honourable Frank Pengello that the next step here is surely to phase out the use of cigarettes over time, and the Greens are certainly supportive of the Honourable Frank Pengello's bill. Might I also just thank the Minister for the collegiate way in which he has worked with the Greens in approaching this bill. When this legislation came forward, one of the issues that we were concerned about was the potential for young people to be involved in controlled purchase operations, or in effect sting operations. Our concern was that you could see very young people being involved in these operations, potentially being put at risk, and that there was not appropriate safeguards in place. I understand that was an issue that was also of concern to the opposition. We didn't want to go down the path of entirely banning this practice, because we have had advice from the government that the involvement of young people in these operations is of benefit to the broader scheme, because it acts as a potential deterrent. What my amendment does is, I think, strike an appropriate balance between protecting the young people involved and ensuring their safety, whilst also protecting the integrity of the government's scheme. Just to save time, I'll talk the chamber through those amendments now, Mr President, during the second reading stage, so that I don't have to do so in committee. What the Greens are proposing is that a designated person, that is, that a person that can participate in a controlled purchase operation, means a child who is or above the age of 16 years. So in effect, it restricts the participation in these activities to 16 and 17-year-olds. It makes it clear that the Minister cannot authorise a designated person to be a controlled purchase officer unless the parent or legal guardian of the person has consented in writing. And the third very important element, which I think points to the issue that the Honourable Frank Pengello raised, is also the authorised officer responsible for supervising any controlled purchase operation involving a designated person, that is someone who is 16 or 17, will be required to undertake an assessment of the operation and must ensure that appropriate measures are in place to ensure the safety of the designated person during that operation. I think that should allay some of the concerns that honourable members have. It certainly allays the concerns the Greens had when we heard about the involvement of young people in these potential sting operations. I am encouraged by the comments that have been made in the second reading stage that indicate there is broad support in this chamber for that approach.